Hey Shaka Bras, my name is Jake and this is the Fireside Tattoo Podcast. I am so excited to tell you about this upcoming series of which, what am I trying to say? I'm so excited to tell you about this upcoming series of which today is episode number 1. Is that how you would say that? Something like that. Carson Hill, the Carson Hill of Neuma Tattoo Machines, sat down with me over 2 sittings about a week or so apart, probably about 4 total hours of talking and podcasting. And we talked about everything tattoo machine related, starting with, I don't want to say coils versus rotaries, starting with coils and rotaries, the similarities, the differences, subtle differences, big differences, why people moved away from coils in mass over to rotaries, what we might be missing by getting away from rotaries, all kinds of stuff. I don't want to go too far into it because the episodes are so good, but they're dense. There's like a lot of information. There's a lot to get out of them. So because of that, I wanted to really trim them down and make them as short as possible. Today's episode, not counting my long-winded intro, is about 20 minutes, and I'd like to keep them all that or shorter. Some of them will be real short, like 5 or 10 minutes, I think. I haven't actually edited all of them down, but today's is about 20 minutes, and it starts with a kind of an overview, a top-down approach. I mean, really, like, what is a coil? How a coil machine functions and how a rotary machine functions, and then we start to kind of go down from there into the differences and all kinds of interesting stuff that I bet you don't know. You might know some of it. You might know all of it. I don't know. But I did not know all of it. I learned a lot. I learned a ton through this entire series. So, let me get a drink of beer. Did I mention Founders Breakfast Stout is not a sponsor today? But man, what a good beer. What a good beer. I have one for breakfast every day. It's like a protein shake, but with coffee in it. You know what I'm saying? So, real quickly, I'm going to go through today's sponsors. I want to start with Neuma Tattoo Machines. They're our sponsoring this entire series, but it's not what you think, and you'll know by the end of this episode. This is not a Neuma commercial. In fact, we don't even talk about Neuma machines, as far as I know, in this episode. Because Carson is a machine builder, we are going to talk some about the Neuma, but that's not what this series is about at all. So if you go to NeumaTattoo.com, whoops, I don't know what it is, just look at the link down in the description below. You'll get 10% off of a Neuma tattoo machine with the promo code Fireside. You're going to want one of these machines. His cam system is crazy. You'll learn a lot about how machines function just by playing with the different cams. And I think, I may be wrong, but I think that that the machine is coming with all of the cams for a short period of time. So typically you would get the cam, like a 20% cam that comes with the machine, and then you would buy the others, like 4 different profiles, I think. And I think for a limited period of time, he is including all of the cams with machine purchase. So, second sponsor, Reinventing the Tattoo, my buddy Guy Aitchison, Gabe Ripley, are sponsoring this show, and we'll drop a link. I think you've got a 10%, I think it's 10% across the board, right? Neuma's 10% off with code Fireside. The subscription to Reinventing the Tattoo is 10% off with code Fireside. Reinventing the Tattoo is awesome. It's kind of like what we do, but like they're doing way more of it. They're doing a ton of different tattoo education, bringing in all kinds of different folks, and they basically have some kind of live event or something going on every single day. There's a drunk critique going on tonight. I might jump on after I finish recording this and see if I can finish off this beer and maybe a couple of others and offer some critiques. Anyways, go to reinventingthetattoo.com at the link below. Put in the code Fireside. Get 10% off of the annual subscription. It's a steal. You're going to want to subscribe to Reinventing the Tattoo. Enough said. And last but not least is TSM Pro, sponsoring today's episode. You've heard me talk about them over the last several episodes. TSM Pro offers technology to simplify tattooers' lives. So whether you need help with scheduling, with client referrals, if you're not great at responding to inquiries via social media or on your website, email, all that kind of stuff, they simplify all of that for you. They can automate it. They can put it all on a single screen where you can see everything that you need to know about your tattoo business right there in a snapshot, a dashboard, you might call it. Anyways, click the links below to learn more about TSM Pro. That was pretty fast, right? I went through 3 sponsors, introduced the episode, talked about breakfast stout, What more can you ask of me? I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this entire series. It really, really was a lot of fun to make. I'm looking forward to continuing to edit it down and figure out how pieces go together. And even watching the edit has been cool because I'm kind of learning or like hearing stuff that I interpreted one way whenever we were having the conversation, and now I'm thinking of it in different ways. So you might want to go back and watch the episodes twice. Can't hurt. Thank you.
Well, let's kind of dive in a little bit. And, we were talking about, I don't know what we end up calling this first little episode, or if this is even the first episode. I assume it will be in this series that we're doing. But we labeled it coil versus rotary, but I think we both decided that that's probably not a good, it's not like, we don't really want to tackle this in a competitive sense, but more about like similarities and differences. And as we move along in the series, we'll likely talk more about what type of machine is right for a particular artist. Particularly beginning artists is something I know we want to tackle for sure. I know the choices are overwhelming now. So let's talk
really quick before you jump forward. I agree, and I think that you've probably heard me say this before, but I do feel that the rotary and coil, it was like a split kind of in the industry, and my current thinking is that I really would like to bridge that gap again and bring it back, because it feels like rotaries went off and did their own thing and were like, yeah, we don't need coils anymore, and then coils were kind of like, bye, don't care, what I mean, with like, so what I would like, what would be awesome in my opinion is if the two worlds could come back together, because the rotary world is missing a lot if it's completely departing from tradition. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I really don't know exactly where to start. We could, we have a few bullet points here. What are the major differences between coils and rotaries, and the subtle differences, similarities? I think most people probably know that are watching the show what a coil is and what a rotary is. But if we had to just distill it down, just to give draw a line and say rotaries are this and coils are this, what would your statement be?
Okay. So a coil is basically a open closed circuit electromagnetic coil. And it operates in a way where the electricity will charge the coils and create them, turn them into magnets, and then it will pull the needle towards it effectively. And then as it moves towards the coil, it loses its connection, and then so it relaxes and goes back. And so it's this repeating thing in that manner. And then rotaries is an electric motor. So coils is a electromagnetic circuit, and rotaries is an electric motor with an offset cam or lobe, basically.
Yeah. And the electric motor works similarly to, it is an electromagnetic, it is coil windings with magnets on either side in an electric motor as well. They just function differently. And that in in a coil machine, as far as best I could describe it, is that the circuit is constantly broken and reestablished, which is causing the armature bar to pull and release. And for our purposes, although that's happening to an extent in an electric motor, because not all of the windings are charged at each all the time. But for our purposes, it never breaks contact in the motor. It's always turning, right?
Yeah, because we're working with the axle or the drive shaft of the motor, and it's just spinning.
Right.
So one's spinning and one's kind of oscillating. And so, obviously the spinning motion of a rotary needs to be translated into oscillating motion. So that's one of the main differences / challenges of designing a rotary, is because ultimately we want oscillation, and that's what coils do, by default. And a rotary, we have to translate that rotating movement into oscillating movement.
Right. So if we had to kind of like parse out the parts of each machine and what purposes they're serving, the coils on a coil machine, electromagnetic coils, basically serve the same purpose as the rotary motor in a rotary machine, right? And that one of them is spinning to move our needles, and the other one is oscillating. The armature bar of a coil machine would in rotaries would be whatever the mechanism is that attaches the spindle or the shaft to the needle, however it gets there, right? Tell me if I'm wrong on any of this. I'm just kind of like pulling this out of my head. The big variable, the thing that seems so different to me, is that the spring armature bar kind of set up on a coil machine has a built-in type of dampening or give system, and we're always trying to like achieve that with a rotary machine, and we have to find like artificial buffers or ways to make that happen. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, so basically the coil, because your armature is basically doing this, and let's say this is the coil, and the armature bar is basically going to like slap it if it makes the full stroke, but it doesn't have to. You know, it can just go halfway or a quarter of the way and still break the connection back here and turn off the coil, right? So in that sense, it wouldn't it's not required that it goes all the way to the coil in order to go back. Whereas to translate that into rotary terms, if it were doing the same thing, it would be forced to go all the way to the coil before it returned.
Right.
If that makes sense. So
yeah.
So the issue, I think, with trying to implement give on a rotary is that what we're talking about, the give on a coil, it's a mechanical give. In other words, like we're saying that this distance that it's not going is the give. And that might be just the amount of power that you give it. It isn't enough power to make it go all the way. Or it might be the needles interacting with the skin, which is pushing back a little bit. And so it's not necessarily making it all the way to the coil. With a rotary, you can't duplicate that. It's that simple. You cannot duplicate it. You can implement different types of things that we can call give. You know, we're giving it, that's the downside here. It's partly the language that we're using, right? Because we're calling this coil, we're saying this part or whatever, that it didn't go all the way is give. And then we're also calling, if we have here, I actually have this sitting here. So this is like a rotary with give, right? So that little cushion it means that can go back and
a
not
little bit
force
higher.
The needle.
Yeah.
So this little part can go back, which means that it doesn't force the needle to go all the way, but it changes the geometry of the whole thing. So it's not the same, it's not relative. And so for us to call that give and call what the coil is doing as give is wrong. It's not the same thing, it's completely different. And so that's why there's this constant argument, I would say, or battle of what is give in a machine, and people are just confused, you know, and I, myself included at times, right? So digital give, it's nothing like this give that we're describing in a coil, and mechanical give, it's also nothing like this give that we're describing in a coil. So it's actually, we're talking about three different things here, and none of them are the same.
Right.
And they're achieving three different things, right? So like a digital give is actually is more of a bogging, is like the secondary word for digital give, bog. And that's really just the motor it's like slowing, it's basically reducing power or not adding power where it might be needed in a rotational motor. That's bog. And then mechanical give on a rotary would be like a flex bar, or like that thing I just showed you, the rubber that makes the needle back off a little bit. But the problem with those, as we've described in some of these other videos we've done, is that it changes the geometry in the cam's life cycle, which ultimately creates this extension of time spent in the skin on a rotary. So that doesn't happen on a coil. You know, that poke is still quick and sharp and gets the hell out of there, but you might only have to go 1/4 of the distance versus a rotary. It's a completely different story.
Right.
Actually, that's interesting. I'm glad that we just touched on that, because that's the first time I've really broken it down in that way. We're talking about three entirely different things. that are not relative to one another.
What's funny, and I went back today and listened to our original episode with Ty Pilata, and you guys were talking about digital give, which is essentially what would naturally happen in a rotary motor when it's met with resistance. It's not really any special anything. I remember Ty was talking about another machine that he used that had a boost mode that basically made up for that. It recognized that the RPMs were slowing down, and it adds more power to achieve the same RPM, which is like they called it boost mode. You guys had the conversation that you were talking about a particular machine where they called digital give essentially what a rotary motor would do without a boost, and he was talking about basically two different manufacturers just labeled it backwards, but they're doing the exact same thing. I did a terrible job explaining that.
No, you didn't. That's actually right. I mean, it's all in the matter. It's the way they're branding it. Mm-hmm. And I honestly think it just adds another layer of confusing information. Like you're saying, like that digital give is just normal. So technically what they're saying is that a prison tat gun, right? It has digital give, right? Yeah. That's what they're saying. They're saying when you're turning off the boost mode, right? And some machines don't have a boost mode at all. That would mean that they have give, but it's not the same. Again, it's the bog. It's more bog, and I personally don't think that bog is a good thing in any situation, right? You want power. You want clean and repeating power.
So you also made the comment in our last episode that a lot of the things that we're talking about with dwell time and all these different percentages are irrelevant if we're talking about coil machines. And you also made the statement that coil machines are just inherently better than rotary machines in their efficiency. They're accelerating at their maximum when they strike the skin. They're in the skin for 10% of the time, and then they retract. And so, with that in mind, with the least amount of dwell time and their acceleration, they just inherently do cause less trauma than like a direct drive rotary. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm going to take a quick note so I don't forget.
Okay, and I know we're going to bounce around a little bit, and there's plenty of other things we want to break up into multiple episodes. So we may find that we tackle some of these things more than once, which is fine. I think people can hear it, in multiple episodes. But
I mean, here's what I think with a coil, like that 10% thing that I'm mapping out and everything. It's a visual representation of something that it's completely varied as well. It's not necessarily 10% in a coil, but in coil terminology, that doesn't really apply, right? So it's really just a way of relating a rotary and what it's doing to a coil under that circumstance, right? But so in the circumstance we were just describing, where the needle bar or the armature bar only goes out a little ways, it wouldn't necessarily be 10% at that point, but it wouldn't matter because the needle still gets in and out really, really quickly, and it doesn't have to go through that motion of completing a cycle. So that's really, it's kind of describing a coil machine under one circumstance and not necessarily interacting with skin, just the way that it runs without the skin interaction. One thing I would say about bog versus not bog, before I forget, is that, and this is an opinion, I think, more so than anything. My opinion is, so I've used both machines with, it's funny, I'm starting to use the terminology and I don't want to do it. I've used tattoo machines, rotary tattoo machines, with just a regular electric motor. And then I've used rotary tattoo machines that have a microchip on board the machine. And the microchip acts as what you were describing, where it detects that the machine has slowed down because it's interacting with the skin, and it adds more power to maintain the RPM. So it's kind of like we're describing a second ago with the bog versus digital give and so forth. But my personal opinion is that when I used those machines that have that boost mode or whatever you call it, chip. I feel, let's put it this way, with a standard electric motor, you know what's coming. So when it starts to slow down, when you come in contact with skin, that's natural. It's like, it's like, and it's predictable. Whereas with this boost mode thing, I'm sure in certain circumstances that could be helpful, but if that's the way my machine ran all the time, it would get confusing because it's like the natural thing is for it to slow down, but then the machine starts doing something funky, and now I'm overworking the skin or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. When you were talking about bog being a bad thing, I know we're talking about rotaries. I'm thinking about in a coil machine. You basically can judge what's happening in the skin just by listening to the bog whenever you're actually tattooing. And I'm thinking about if comparing it to like a boost mode and a rotary. If you're running a coil machine and you put the needles to the skin and it didn't change sounds at all, you would think, oh my God, I'm annihilating this person, right?
And just to clarify, I don't think that bog is bad unless your machine is underpowered. If you have enough power, then a little bit of that slowing down is normal and natural and expected. But let's say the thing is not putting out enough juice, and then it bogs down, and now you just have this like dragging thing going on. Then I think that's a problem.
Right. So trying to keep this episode, since it's our first one, on kind of on a higher level, of without going too deep. If coils are superior machines, why did rotaries have such a resurgence in the first place?
Well, I think to say coils are superior is not accurate. Okay. I think that they both have their benefits. I would say that the action of a finely tuned coil and the needle and the feeling that you get when it's perfectly, tuned and everything, I certainly prefer that. But I'm talking about, if this is a tattoo machine, I'm talking about this much of the experience.
Right.
I'm not talking about all of this part of the experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, there's a couple of things. Unfortunately, I always had trouble keeping my coils perfectly tuned. They were always a little erratic and unexpected and unpredictable. And then, the best ones, for some reason, are heavy. Probably because they're made from a brass frame, and brass works better, or, a lot of these brands with the word iron in their name, it's because iron is better than aluminum, for example. And so the light ones, you had even more problems with. The heavy ones were the ones that you would go with, right?
Right.
And so then you have this really heavy thing sitting off the back of and as a new tattooer, that takes getting used to, and it's something that we all figured out eventually. But, and then I wish I had a coil sitting here, but, like if this was, my hand was the coil, like sometimes it would be sideways, and sometimes it's hanging down, and then other times you're like working here and the thing's in the way, so I think as far as ergonomics go, the rotary has got it beat.
Yeah.
Particularly the pen, because, interestingly enough, the standard like angled L-shaped rotaries aren't solving any problem by other than, okay, so the tuning factor. A standard angled rotary does solve that problem for the most part, but you're also giving up the benefits of the coil.
Yeah. So ergonomics and kind of predictability would be two advantages of the rotary. I heard, I don't remember if he said it to me or if I heard him say it in another interview years ago. Guy Aitchison said when he was asked about rotaries, he said, well, it kind of made it where you don't have to be a mechanic to drive a car. And I was thinking about that because that was right at the time that it seemed like there was just this wave. I'm sure it was just a wave of social media showing me more tattooers and more tattoos than I'd ever seen. But I was seeing all of these young tattooers coming up doing really exceptional technical work with, pen style rotaries. And I couldn't help but wonder, like, could they have done this, 10 years ago with coil machines trying to get used to just the weight and the vibration and the and the noise and all of the intimidating factors of coil machines.
Yeah, and I would venture to guess that the resurgence of the rotary is in large part responsible for the industry taking off in the way that it did. I mean, there were artists that existed prior to all of that were doing outstanding work. I could name a lot of them, using coils and producing portraits that are just as good as these guys today. But once you took out that element of, working on your own truck effect, now normal people, but you know what I mean? Like more people could come in and master the craft without having to master two crafts, because that's kind of what they're doing. The coil guys, they're mastering art and the art of running the coil properly,
Right. Yeah. You really had to be a technician, or you have to be a technician if you're tattooing with coils.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Next week, be sure to stay tuned because we're going to continue this discussion and we change gears a little bit. We talk a little bit more about stroke profiles, stroke lengths, why that kind of stuff matters. I think we also talked a little bit about needle making and just about needles in general in this next upcoming episode. I'm not positive about that though. In one of these upcoming episodes, I believe it's the next one. Anyways, we're going to keep chipping away at these things. I don't know how many episodes it's going to be. Probably less than 5, 3 to 5 would be my guess. But we'd love to hear your comments. If you know something that we don't, if we missed something that you'd like to discuss or you'd like to learn more about, leave them in the comments and I will read them and I will bring them up to Carson. That's it. Thank you for supporting what we do, and we'll see you next time. Hey, thanks again for watching. Please be sure to like and comment and subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date with all of the things that we are doing. If you would like to buy us a drink, please support us on Patreon. There's a button somewhere around here that allows you to do that. You can also visit our website and subscribe to our newsletter so you know where we're headed and what we're doing. And while you're there, please check out our merchandise page. Buy yourself a fancy new Fireside t-shirt. Thank you for supporting the Fireside Tattoo Network, and we'll see you on the next episode.